You're here because you want the real story, the key insights, without getting lost in endless research. We get it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what we're doing today as we take a deep dive into vitamin B9. You might notice folic acid or folate.
That's right.
But we're not just covering the basics here. We're really digging into its fascinating, kind of surprising connection to your genes and, believe it or not, even where your ancestors came from.
Exactly. Our mission in this deep dive is to really understand how your own, your unique genetic makeup can influence just how much B9 your body actually needs.
Okay.
And maybe more importantly, we'll explore the absolutely critical role this vitamin plays in your health. It's not simply about swallowing a pill, it's about the specific type and crucially how efficiently your body is able to use it.
Yeah, okay. Let's unpack this straight away. Why is B9 so important for you?
Well, at its core, B9 is absolutely essential for a huge number of vital processes in your body. But one of the most fundamental is DNA, the production and repair of your DNA within every single cell.
DNA repair.
Yeah, think of B9 as the essential maintenance crew for your genetic blueprint. It's constantly repairing and replicating.
Yeah.
Every cell relies on healthy DNA to do its job properly and, well, to create new cells. B9 is absolutely key to this whole ongoing process.
So if this DNA maintenance isn't happening the way it should, what kind of impact might that have on, day to day?
Well, one consequence, as our sources point out, can be a noticeable dip in your overall energy level.
Oh, okay. Energy. Makes sense.
Yeah, when your cells aren't functioning at their peak because of issues with their DNA, their ability to produce energy is compromised. It's interesting, one source even draws a parallel to hyperbaric chambers.
Oh, yeah.
Which boost oxygen and are linked to anti-aging effects. So think of it this way. If a lack of B9 hinders your cells, it could, in a way, sort of contribute to a faster aging process.
That's a really powerful way to put it. And it's not just feeling tired, right? I know B9 often comes up when people talk about blood health.
Absolutely. B9 plays a really crucial role in forming your red blood cells. Those are the cells carrying oxygen everywhere in your body. If you don't have enough usable B9 along with enough B12, your body just can't manufacture these red blood cells effectively.
And that leads to?
Well, it can lead to anemia, and less oxygen circulating means every single cell, and therefore you as a whole, you just can't function optimally. Energy drops again.
Okay. Now, a lot of us have probably heard about how important B9 is for women during pregnancy. Can you elaborate on why it's so critical then?
Yes, this is a truly critical area. B9 is absolutely vital for the healthy development of the nervous system, especially in the very, very early stages of pregnancy.
Like how early?
Well, the sources point out that these crucial developmental steps often happen before a woman even knows for sure she's pregnant.
Wow.
Okay, so insufficient B9 during this period significantly raises the risk of really serious birth defects like spina bifida and anencephaly in the developing baby.
So definitely something for you to be mindful of, even if you're just thinking about starting a family. What about beyond pregnancy? Does B9 keep playing important roles?
Oh, definitely. It certainly does. The active form of B9, it helps to keep levels of an amino acid called homocysteine in check.
Homocysteine, I've heard of that. Heart health related.
Exactly. High levels of homocysteine have been linked to an increased risk of heart disease and stroke. So by making sure you have enough usable B9, you're also actively supporting your cardiovascular health.
And it seems B9's influence even reaches into our mental well-being, which is something I know a lot of our listeners are interested in.
That's right. The active form of B9 is actually needed by your brain to produce key neurotransmitters, those chemical messengers.
Like serotonin.
Exactly, like serotonin, which affects mood, dopamine, involved in motivation, even melatonin, which regulates your sleep cycles.
Ah.
So if you have low levels of usable B9, your body might struggle to produce enough of these crucial neurotransmitters. This can contribute to changes in mood, maybe feeling low on motivation, even depression, and difficulties with sleep.
So you might be trying all sorts of things to boost your mood or sleep better.
Right, but if you're lacking in the active form of B9, your body simply doesn't have the necessary building blocks. It's fundamental.
It's becoming very clear just how indispensable B9 is for so many things. But one of the points our sources really hammered home was that not all B9 you encounter is created equal. Can you break down this distinction for us? It sounds important.
This is a truly crucial point for you to understand. We primarily encounter B9 in two main forms: folic acid and folate.
Okay.
Folic acid is the synthetic version. It's often added to fortified foods. Think many breakfast cereals, breads, flour.
Well, you see it on the labels.
Exactly. Now, here's the catch. Your body has to go through a multi-step conversion process, mainly in your gut and liver, to transform that folic acid into its usable, active form.
And this conversion process. It isn't always straightforward for everyone, is it?
Precisely. What's fascinating and maybe a bit concerning is that the sources indicate over half, maybe even more of the studied population are what are known as hypomethylators.
Hypomethylators. Okay.
This often relates to variations in a specific gene, the MTHFR gene, which is a key player in processing folic acid.
So genetic thing.
Yeah, these individuals have a genetic variation that makes it significantly harder for them to convert folic acid into that active form we need, which is called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, or 5-MTHF for short.
5-MTHF.
Got it. And furthermore, the sources note that a buildup of this unmetabolized folic acid in your body over the long term could potentially be harmful. We don't want that floating around unused.
That's definitely something for you to consider if you rely heavily on fortified foods. So what's the alternative then? Folate.
Yes, folate. That's the naturally occurring form of B9. You find it in foods like dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, also legumes like beans and lentils. And avocados are a good source too.
Okay, so natural sources are better.
Well, they're the form your body evolved with, but even with folate from food, absorption isn't always guaranteed, you know? If your digestive system is in really good shape, you might absorb anywhere between 50% and maybe up to 90% of the folate you eat. But things like regularly taking antacids or having underlying issues with intestinal absorption, those can significantly knock that percentage down. Plus, just like with folic acid, your liver still needs to be working well to convert that dietary folate into the active 5-MTHF form that your body can actually use.
So the key takeaway for you here is just eating B9-rich foods, whether they're fortified with folic acid or naturally contain folate, it doesn't automatically mean you have enough usable B9 if your body struggles with that conversion step.
Exactly right. And this brings us neatly to a really central process that's heavily dependent on how well your body handles B9, methylation.
Methylation, right. It's a term that pops up a lot in health discussions, and you might be wondering what it actually means for you. Can you explain what it is and why it's so important in relation to B9?
Okay, so methylation. It's a fundamental biochemical process. It's happening literally billions of times every single second in your body. Billions.
Okay.
It's absolutely vital for a huge range of functions. We mentioned DNA repair earlier. B9's role there is part of methylation. It's also crucial for things like recycling hormones, turning genes on and off. It's massive.
So it's not just one thing.
Not at all. One source uses a great analogy comparing methylation to a train, like a complex railway system with many interconnected lines. If there's a problem on one part of the track, say with B9 metabolism, it can cause delays and problems all over the system. The consequences can go far beyond just the function of that one vitamin.
So if this methylation process isn't working optimally in your body, what kind of broader health issues might you be looking at down the line?
Well, impaired methylation has been linked to a number of pretty significant health risks that you should definitely be aware of. This includes increased chances of miscarriage, the development of osteoporosis, a higher risk of diabetes, the formation of tumors, and even cognitive decline like dementia.
Dementia too, goodness.
It really underscores just how central and absolutely crucial this process is to your overall long-term health and well-being.
That paints a very clear picture for why you should be paying attention to methylation.
Yeah.
What are some of the factors then that can actually damage this process and in turn mess with how well your body uses B9?
Okay, so several factors can negatively impact methylation in your body. We touched on genetics earlier, right?
Yeah, the MTHFR gene.
Right. Some of you might just have a genetic tendency towards higher homocysteine levels or have that difficulty converting folate effectively. And the sources do point out that genetic testing can sometimes help identify these predispositions.
Okay, what else?
Diet is absolutely critical. A diet that's consistently low in both B12 and B9 is a major, major factor. You really need a good intake of those dark leafy greens, beans, fruits, whole grains to get enough B6, B12, betaine, and folate. All players in this methylation game.
And B12, that's mainly animal products.
Primarily, yes. The sources note that vegan diets, if not carefully planned, might pose a risk for B12 deficiency over the long term, since B12 is mostly found in things like eggs, meat, liver, fatty fish.
Got it. Anything else harming methylation?
Smoking is another big one. The carbon monoxide in cigarette smoke can actually inactivate vitamin B6, which is also needed for methylation.
Didn't know that connection.
Yeah. And surprisingly, maybe having low stomach acid hypochlorhydria can also be detrimental.
Low stomach acid. How?
Well, it reduces your body's ability to absorb B vitamins properly from your food, and it hinders protein digestion too, which can potentially increase the risk of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Okay.
And finally, certain medications and environmental toxins can interfere. Methotrexate is a well-known example that impacts folate metabolism.
So it sounds like addressing these potentially damaging factors is really key for you to support healthy methylation in your body. What are some positive, actionable strategies you can take? How can you ensure you're maintaining healthy B9 levels?
Absolutely. Increasing your consumption of those dark, leafy green vegetables is a fantastic starting point for you. Really aim for about a cup every day.
Like kale, spinach.
Yeah, kale, watercress, spinach, even dandelion greens if you can find them. They're packed with folate.
Okay, eat your greens. What else?
Make sure you're getting adequate amounts of B6, B9, and B2 through your overall diet. They all work together. If you tend to eat a lot of animal protein, maybe consider moderating that intake slightly. That might be beneficial for some people's methylation balance.
Right.
Reducing caffeine intake can help. Completely avoiding smoking is obviously huge. Limiting alcohol consumption too. These are all supportive steps.
And the gut. You mentioned SIBO.
Yes, maintaining a healthy balance of gut bacteria is another important piece of the puzzle for you. Remember, those beneficial bacteria in your gut actually produce some vitamins themselves, including some B12. So supporting a healthy gut flora is crucial.
What about supplements? If someone thinks they might be low, especially with that MTHFR gene variation?
That's a good question. If you suspect you might be deficient in B9, particularly if you know you have difficulties with folic acid conversion, you might consider talking to a healthcare professional about supplementing with the active form of B9.
The 5-MTHF one.
Exactly, 5-methyltetrahydrofolate. A common supplemental dose mentioned is around 5 milligram, but, the sources do note that higher doses might be needed if you're taking less absorbable forms. Always best to get guidance, though.
Right.
And if you suspect a B12 deficiency, that's definitely something to get specific advice on from a doctor or qualified practitioner regarding supplementation.
These are some really practical, helpful steps for you to consider. Now, one of the things our sources brought up that I found really interesting, and I think many of you will too, is this link between our ancestry and our individual B9 needs.
Yes, this is where the concept of personalized nutrition really starts to get fascinating for you. The basic idea is that your genes have adapted over countless generations to the specific environments and the typical dietary patterns of wherever your ancestors lived.
So evolution, basically, based on diet.
Pretty much. And interestingly, mutations related to that key gene that activates B9 MTHFR again, they're actually more commonly found in populations from regions where the historical diet was naturally rich in B9.
Wait, more common where there was lots of B9? That seems backwards.
It does at first glance, but think about it. If the diet already provided plenty of folate, maybe the pressure to have a super efficient conversion system wasn't as strong. Conversely, in areas where B9 intake was typically low, individuals carrying mutations that made it harder to use B9 would have been less likely to thrive, less likely to reproduce.
Okay. So natural selection favored efficient B9 use where it was scarce.
Exactly. The sources specifically point out that these B9 activation gene variations, the ones making conversion potentially harder, are more prevalent in people who have ancestors from regions like Mexico, Italy, Spain, and also parts of China.
Mexico, Italy, Spain, China.
Interesting. Yeah. So what this suggests for you is that if your family history traces back to these parts of the world, you might have a potentially higher genetic risk of experiencing health issues if you become deficient in B9.
So it would be extra important for those individuals.
Exactly. It would be particularly important for you, if that's your background, to really focus on consuming enough of those leafy green vegetables, and also maybe things like organ meats and eggs, which are traditionally good natural sources of folate.
And does it matter if it's just one parent or both?
The sources suggest this potential risk is even more pronounced if both of your parents come from these ancestral regions. You inherit genes from both, after all.
That's a really compelling reason for you to maybe dig into your family history a bit when you're thinking about your nutritional needs. Okay, finally, let's circle back to pregnancy just for a moment. We know folic acid supplementation is standard advice in early pregnancy because B9 is so critical for the baby's development. But
Yeah.
is that the whole story for you?
Well, while folic acid supplementation, or ideally the active folate form, in early pregnancy is indeed widespread and super important because of that critical role in preventing neural tube defects.
Right.
The sources rightly encourage you to consider if B9 is the only crucial nutrient during this time. It's not, of course. Taking a broader view, the overall nutritional quality of the mother's diet is just paramount for both a healthy pregnancy and for supporting fertility in the first place.
Fertility, too.
Yes, including potentially reducing the risk of miscarriage and leading to improved health outcomes for the baby long term. And interestingly, the sources also touch on the rising rates of male infertility we're seeing in many countries.
Oh, right. What about that?
They highlight the negative impact that diets high in refined carbohydrates, sugars, and those unhealthy trans fats can have on male reproductive health, too. It's not just about the woman's diet.
So it's really a team effort when you're thinking about starting a family.
Absolutely not at all just the woman's nutrition. The sources even mention that historically, in many traditional cultures that ate really nutrient-dense diets, couples would often prepare their bodies for pregnancy for maybe up to 2 years beforehand.
2 years? Wow.
Yeah, focusing on a diet rich in fat-soluble vitamins like A, D3, E, K2, and also those important B vitamins we've been talking about, including B9 and B12.
So preparing the ground, so to speak.
Exactly. And for men who are specifically looking to improve their fertility now, the sources mention reducing oxidative stress. Things like antioxidants, coenzyme Q10, selenium, vitamin C, vitamin E, and acetylcysteine are highlighted as potentially beneficial.
Okay. And for women during the pregnancy itself, beyond folate.
Yeah, definitely increased needs. For iron, for folate specifically, that active 5-MTHF form vitamin D is crucial. Choline is very important. And those same antioxidants we mentioned are beneficial for mom and baby, too. It's a period of really high nutritional demand.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive for you, really connecting the dots between something seemingly simple like vitamin B9 and then your unique genes, your ancestry, and just so many different aspects of your overall health.
Absolutely. And as we kind of bring this all together for you, it's just vital to remember the central, really foundational role that methylation plays in your overall health. It operates at both the genetic level, your DNA blueprint, and the epigenetic level, how those genes are expressed.
Right.
And supporting healthy methylation by making sure you get adequate B6, B9, and B12, along with those other lifestyle factors we talked about, diet, smoking, gut health. It really has the potential to help you prevent many of the age-related diseases that we often just think of as inevitable.
So what does this all really mean for you, our listener? Here's where it gets really interesting. Take a moment, think about your own ancestry. Do you know where your family roots lie? And based on what we've explored today, could your ancestral background have specific implications for your individual B9 needs? Are your current dietary habits right now truly supporting your body's ability to effectively utilize this crucial vitamin? And are they supporting those healthy methylation processes you need for your long-term health and well-being?
Yeah.
It's definitely some valuable food for thought for you, and maybe a great starting point for you to explore the really fascinating world of personalized nutrition a bit further.